Okay, thank you. And who do we have on the telephone lines? Oh, this is a noisy group.
Evening, Peter.
Thank you, Trustee Garrell. I've never used this ever. Did you notice that? It works. Who do I have on the telephone lines? Thank you very much, by the way. Trustee Garrell? Trustee Swan, did I hear you?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. I apologize for the gavel. Carol, you
I better take it away from you.
Thank you. I'd like to call to order the October 26, 2016 public session, and I'll ask us to stand for the singing of O Canada. And I'll ask the Director to do roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, trustees. This is our roll call for our meeting of 26 October 2016. Trustee Armour. Present. First Vice Chair Karkner.
Present.
Trustee Cran.
Present.
Trustee Garrell.
Present.
Trustee Bill McPherson.
Present.
Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Present.
Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Second Vice Chair McDonald.
Present.
Chair McMillan.
Present.
Trustee Richards.
Present.
Trustee Swan.
Present.
Student Trustee Grace Marr.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director. I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda items 3.02 to 3.03, October 26, 2016 as submitted. Moved by Trustee Bill McPherson, seconded by Trustee Richards. I ask you to cast your votes, please. And that carries. Thank you. Do we have any conflict of interest declarations? Seeing there are none, I want to move on to our first presentation, our delegation that is from Thousand Island Secondary School. And I'll pass this over to Superintendent David Coombs, who'll do the introduction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You will notice tonight, for the record, I am not wearing purple. I would like to state I don't own a purple shirt, but I am shopping for one, so if anyone happens to know where I can get one, I'd be happy to add it to my wardrobe. I say that because tonight we have, of course, the Purple Pride of Thousand Island Secondary School, and TIS is one of our largest day schools, and 7 to 12 school just here in Brockville, just north of us, and they have a very long and proud tradition in both athletics and academics, and I'm really pleased tonight to have the entire administrative team, Principal Terry Gardner, come on up, Vice Principal Dave Fisher, and Vice Principal Danielle Ouellette.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And I think I do have purple in my closet. Just saying.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to come to the Board of Trustees to talk about South Island Secondary School. I have the best job in Brockville. I'm very privileged to serve at a school I attended. I have a very dedicated staff, including Vice Principal Fisher, who I often find in grade 7-8 math classes, trying out some new strategies and getting students excited about mathematics. I have Vice Principal Danielle Ouellette, who's a recognized expert in language acquisition, and they both have their fingerprints all over the school improvement plans we're going to share today. I also serve a remarkable and diverse student body at TIS. And because I'm at the biggest high school in the area, every fast food joint I go into, I have a TIS student that serves me and treats me great. I want to tell you the story of how TIS works to educate young people to a high level, but also strives to be a community builder and the conduit of opportunity in the Brockville area. Here's a TIS infographic. School just shy of 1,000 students. 31% of our families are one-parent families, about 5% above the board. 2,219 hours of community use at TIS last year. That's about 3 times the board average for high schools. 110 students in co-op this semester alone, learning relevant skills, making connections to employment. This helps our economy, our students, and our community. Vibrant, growing French immersion program. Our Tell Them For Me survey data tells us that a higher percentage of TIS students participate in sports than the Canadian norm. However, the TTFM data also shows us that TIS students participate less in clubs and activities than the Canadian norm, and I'm going to come back to that later on in the presentation. TIS is home to $1 million track facility. It's a real Upper Canada District School Board and community asset, and just about 8,000 young athletes used the TIS track last year. Our Help Club partners with Brockville Rotary and Rotary International to do good work in our community, and they do a biannual trip to Nicaragua and have done really good humanitarian work in that country. TIS has a robust arts program that includes a grade 7-8 instrumental music program, dance, visual arts, photography, and music theater. Thousand Island Secondary School has 3 SHSM programs and delivers a large number of Red Seal diplomas each year. There's evidence of TIS involvement in the community peppered all around the Brockville area. The stand in this picture was made at TIS, fabricated at TIS to hold a fossil at the local aquatorium. There are plaques, statues, a metal rescue boat at the Brockville Yacht Club, and even an underwater sculpture for divers to enjoy that have been created by TIS students to enhance our community. We have an international education program with about 55 students. They also participated in our Canada 150 Day with 2 ball hockey teams. Our integrated math, science, technology credit bundle for grade 9s. When we look at our EQO data, we see a relatively good trajectory in OSSLT, or the literacy test. TIS outcomes are consistently above the board, but we know we have room to improve. And we'll talk more about that when we look at our literacy SIPSA. In applied math, although still above the board, our trajectory is not going the way we'd like it to do. We're looking very closely at our results for academic math last year. It took a dive for that year. We think maybe the precision of grade 8 to 9 transition and some consistency in teaching practice are things that we can improve upon this year. As readers, some of our grade 7-8 students benefit greatly from Empower Reading, and it impacts on their confidence and long-term success as readers. When we look at cohort data, and that's the same students that wrote in grade 6 EQO and then again in grade 10 EQO, we see gains in student writing, but not a significant gain in students' reading abilities between the grade 6 EQL and then the grade 10 literacy. And that we'll explore later on when we look at the literacy SIPSA. as problem solvers in math, our applied level students show relative strength against the board average in linear relations, which is a strand of mathematics, measurement and geometry, but number sense and algebra is a relative weakness. Having a learning resource teacher who is a math expert available for focused support has been a good strategy for our math students with special education needs. When we look at our literacy SIPSA, we believe that if we use standard diagnostics to assess student need and address those needs with comprehensive literacy strategies, then student achievement will improve in literacy. And like I said earlier, our cohort data shows that our students really do improve from grade 6 to grade 10 in their writing. So a lot of the strategies we have in place, writing frames, shared writing activities, sort of formulaic things that students can dig into are showing dividends, but our students aren't improving as readers. So our teachers, and especially our SIPSA team, have come to us and asked us, how do we teach reading explicitly from grade 7 to 10? So we've dug into the Guide to Effective Practice in Reading, which is more known as a grade 4 to 6 document, but we're trying to make it relevant for our adolescent learners. So that's been a real focus of our work in literacy. Our entire staff is digging into 7 high-yield strategies throughout this school year. So things like KWL charts, graphic organizers that every teacher in every subject area can use. It was from an article in the American School Leadership, and we've adopted that plan and have been working at it at every staff meeting. Numeracy. We believe that if we develop consistent math language from grade 7 to 10, utilize 3-part lessons, have rich tasks, manipulatives, and collaborate on next steps for marker students, student achievement in math will improve. And I know that the 10% increase in academic, which is part of our goal, is lofty, but I think last year was an outlier or a bit of a misfire. I could be off base, but I believe that that 10% is actually doable. It would bring us back to where our trajectory was. And some strategies that we're doing with numeracy is like you said, we're using EduGains, ministry documents, the 3-part lesson, and we've broken into the manipulatives that have been sent out to every school and are working together. We're also planning and co-teaching together in grade 7, 8, 9, 10 teams. TIS may be the only school that also has an assessment goal. And we believe that if we use clear learning goals and success criteria created with student voice and personalized assessment for students who are persistently in level 2 or in the 60s, student achievement will improve. Marker students are students that we've zeroed in on. We use the report card data and other data to pick a few students that we can really focus on, so that way between our SIPSA team meetings we can take student work and see if things that we're trying are making gains with those students. And so we believe that we can make some gains with those students. Those strategies will help all the students in the school. And it makes it very reasonable to work with that data. When you ask a principal, how are your students doing in your school? If you can't zero it down to some marker students, it's pretty hard to, on a daily basis, to see improvements in student learning. So that's our theory of action with our assessments, SIPSA, and I think all teachers can see themselves in that SIPSA also. And if you see the diagram that's posted there, Matthew, Willie, and Alex have created success criteria for that writing piece. The power is in the students being able to know what their strengths are and what their next steps are to improve their work. So these students have worked with their teacher, have made some success criteria for level 1, level 2, level 3. They have it posted in their room so they can take their student work and go up and see what's my strength, what am I doing well, what's my next step, and they can move their writing forward. Collaboration and wellness. TIS students report in the TTFM that they feel challenged in their learning, and their learning is relevant at a rate above the Canadian norm. We think that that's in part due to the rich technical education programs that we have at TIS. We have hospitality, we have transportation technology, we have woodworking, we have manufacturing, we have the SHISM programs, and we have rich arts programs to engage students. TIS students report at a higher level of anxiety and depression than the Canadian norm. TIS students also tell us in TTFM that their two top barriers to success at TIS are anxiety and lack of interest. So to work on that, our grade 8 students have written a proposal and received a grant for funding for fun, non-competitive fitness equipment, and we're installing that. We have a group of students who just came back from a ministry initiative called Students as Researchers, and they actually have talked to me today about their action research. They're going to do some action research around that anxiety and depression and how we can move forward. We also have good partners with Children's Mental Health, and we use some of that data about the anxiety and depression at TIS to lever a little bit more support through Children's Mental Health. We have victim services in our school, and Dr. Darcy Santor has worked with us. When we see 19% of our students saying that anxiety is a barrier to success, 1 in 5, we can't have 1 in 5 students with a counselor. So I think our theory of action moving ahead, and our teachers are really on board with this, is taking some time in each class to talk about coping strategies. How are we going to study for this test? How are we going to move if something is different tomorrow? So we believe that having some extra gym time available for students, more activities, and working in class will pay dividends for that large number of students that feel anxiety. We've also changed our duty schedule, so our teachers aren't doing detention, our vice principals are, and so it freed up some teacher time for open gym time to support clubs and activities, and we believe that will pay dividends. TIS is a composite school, and students choose various pathways. TIS to university, TIS to assisted living, TIS to college, TIS to apprenticeship, TIS to American University and College for athletes, TIS to the workplace. So some of our partnerships with the Education Employment Center, the Volunteer Bureau, our co-op programs, OEAP to get students apprenticeship hours, are positioning students to leave TIS and contribute to our Brockville economy and to our Brockville families very strongly. So we believe that TIS is a conduit of success for Brockville and for our students leaving TIS. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Normally I turn it over to the trustee for that particular area first. That would be me. And Thousand Islands, I mean, I obviously don't favor one school over another, but having been a graduate of Thousand Islands, obviously it grabs my attention. It's a school, it's a beehive of activity. You've got a variety of students in that building, and I'm very proud of the work that you do to meet the needs of every student that walks through that door. You have a lot to offer. And I think, Terry, that obviously I've known you a long time, and that the leadership you provide to that school, I think, shows absolute integrity, and I think it shows the servant leadership that brings the best out in your staff. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
I turn it over to the trustees. Comments or questions? Trustee Kartner.
Thank you for your presentation. I was wondering on slide number 6, the last one that you shared with us, what is the graph, the different categories that you ask the children to submit answers on? I think one is drugs, the first one, and then anxiety. What are the others? I'm curious about.
So this was a multiple choice question with the Tell Them For Me survey. The principal's allowed to make a few of the multiple choice questions. So I asked, is poverty a barrier? Is anxiety a barrier? Is a learning difference, that's the LD, is that a barrier? Is interest in school a barrier? And
Look at family
issues, is that a barrier?
But the last one, what is it? No B. What's that stand for?
No barrier.
No barrier?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, good to see the percentage high on that, but,
And within that, within the multiple course choice, the power of that is then I can cross-reference that to any other question. So, in fact, I was today with my student researchers. We clicked on drug use as the barrier, and then we cross-referenced it with anxiety. And guess what? The anxiety is way, way high with students that say that drug use is a barrier for their success.
thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Director?
Mr. Chair, through you, I've had a couple of opportunities to visit the school, and what I can say is that I'm really quite impressed by how a school of that size actually has a sense of community. And I really think that that goes to the staff and the admin team that are there. There's a strong effort to be visible at the school, all the adults. And I also think that there's also a very positive response from students to that adult presence. It's not easy to run a school on the best of days, and it's certainly not easy to run a school when it's in a very very popular part of the city and a corridor where students could have a choice not to come to school or to stay in school. And I just sense that by their presence at the school and that sense of community, we're doing all the right things so that students have an easy choice on any given day to come to school.
Thank you, Director.
I have another
Go ahead,
question.
Trustee Creighton.
On your second slide, on your chart of the number of students in each of the grade levels, I noticed that you have 278 in grade 12, hopefully all graduating, and 120 in grade 7. Do you have any solutions to bring those numbers up so that they're even whenever coming in and going out?
Through you, Chair. There's a couple of things that influence our 55 students in international programming, and they would be concentrated in grade 11 and 12. So that does change the numbers. I think our market share has been fairly consistent, and the declining enrollment is part of the issue here. I think trying to again have our positive image in the community. I think working at the academics also and at a high level, and just making TIS known as a conduit of opportunity is what we've been working at. As appealing more grade 7s, well, we're not sure what the magic solution would be for that, but that trend is very notable in our data.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Anyone on the phone lines?
Through you, Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Trustee Swan.
Terry, I talked to you on Monday, and I'd just like you to expand on something that wasn't mentioned in this is the hockey program and why you're doing it and what are the benefits to the kids and to the school.
Yeah, through you, Chair. We started a high-performance co-op program for athletes where athletes could earn co-op credits by doing that coursework and setting goals and participating usually at a provincial level sport. So the hockey program was the next evolution of that. So students are in 2 face-to-face classes at TIS. They have an online course, and then some of their practice time is counted for co-op credit because they set goals and do the coursework with that. And all that coursework is on Desire to Learn. So even if they're on the road somewhere, they can get access to that work. And it's been a good success. There's 15 students involved in that.
Okay, thank you. Anything more, Trustee Swan?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, thank you very much. Thanks all 3 of you for being here tonight, and if you want to stick around for the whole meeting, you're more than welcome, but I imagine we'll hear you squeal out of the parking lot. So thank you. All right, moving on to the next item is the EQAO report to board. I'm going to try to turn this over to, I believe, Superintendent Val Allen's doing this one.
Good evening, trustees. It gives me pleasure to bring to you the EQAO story for Upper Canada District School Board. And it's a story we haven't actually shared much or in depth in the last few years. So tonight I have a fulsome presentation showing some trends in EQAO both provincially and with our school board. So the mandate of EQAO is to assess how well Ontario's public education system is developing students' reading, writing, and math skills. And it also provides reliable and useful information that can help schools and school boards with looking at their student achievement and the accountability of school boards. So this slide represents the elementary achievement results. It is a combined grade 3 and 6 EQAO results for the 15 up to last year and starting in 2002 and 2003. And you can see from the graph there has been a significant trend upward except for last year. And in 2014 and 15, because not all boards wrote the EQAO in the elementary panels, there is no results available for that year. You can see this graphic includes both English and French boards, and you can see that there has been a 17% percentage increase since 2002-2003. So when we have information like that, what does the EQAO provincial work help us with and relate down to school board? The progress over the past 10 years is a result of focused work in 4 areas. So the goals are to improve teaching and learning, to improve school effectiveness, including board improvement plan and planning process, to build leadership capacity in our leaders across the system, and also allows for research and evaluation. EQAO assessment results show us that there's still more work to be done to help students working towards meeting that provincial curriculum and provincial standard. And one area in particular is the mathematics that is persistently trending downwards. So the next series of slides show a comparison from the provincial data, which you see represented in blue, and the green data, which represents our own school board. And it's important to note that this data is a year-by-year data, not the cohort data that you often see in the school presentations that come to board. So you can see as a result of in the reading, math, and writing, and this slide represents our primary data story. Our results approach the provincial standard each year. We're a little bit under in every area, except for the math where we are significantly lower than the provincial standard. In our junior story, it's very similar. Our results are close to, or in some areas exceed, the provincial standard, but in math we are significantly lower, 10% lower than the provincial standard on average. This graph is a small graph, but if you look at it for the trends in the colored graphs, you can see really we're looking at the progression over time. So this is a provincial secondary data of the green line is the OSSLT results. So you can see that they range at about 80% and have been fairly, they were fairly flat over the first 5 years of the data and then dropped a little wee bit and have seem to be trending downward. The next line is the blue line is the academic math results, so the grade 9 EQAO test. And again, there was a trend upward in the first 5 years of the data, and over the last few years has had a very flat trajectory. And again, there was no data for the last school year, not last school year, but the year before. And the red line that you see on this graph represents the grade 9 applied math results. And you can see that they're basically about 40% lower than the academic math. So that is definitely an area that we need to pay attention to, and it also is a result of the renewed math strategy, which you heard about at the last board meeting. So if we go specifically to our board and comparing that data with the provincial data, the data you have in front of you is based on fully participating students, and it represents numbers of students that were at or above the board average. And again, our board results are consistently about 10% lower than the province, and the trajectory of the results for both the board and the province have been quite flat over time. Here's our grade 9 math data compared to the province. So the blue represents the applied math, where we score in the range of about 40% of success at the provincial standard. And our board data it dropped about 4 years ago, and it has remained low at that lower level. And our academic math results, again, are a bit lower than the province and are on that same flat trajectory. So we're very confident with our renewed math strategy implementation that we're going to change that trajectory. So what are we doing to address the EQO data? Well, over the last couple years, we have really been examining the data school by school to identify what we need to focus on in school improvement planning. The implementation of SIPSA goals and BIPSA goals, school improvement planning goals, have been set using EQAO data to help dig into what schools should be focusing on. And you've heard many of those strategies. You even heard them tonight from the TIS team at their school. We are also using this data to identify students who are specifically at risk due to the low performance and targeting supports for them. Principal Gardner spoke of marker students, so that's one strategy. Also at the last school presentation, you heard how schools are looking at, in Russell, the principal there referenced that they noticed that schools who were receiving special needs support, that they were not performing as well, so they were setting their school improvement targets based on that data. So putting specific interventions for students who are performing in particular just below standard. We're using this information also to inform our instructional approaches, and I've already referenced the renewed math strategy, changing our pedagogy in our math classrooms in particular, specifically training through math study days and how we can use rich tasks, how we can ensure that math learning tools are available to all students. And in the literacy side, again, going back to the reports that are put out by and the strategies that are put out by the ministry in the curriculum documents, and supporting our literacy instruction in that way and targeting it to students who are not performing at the provincial level. So that gives us a summary of what our where we have been and where we are heading in our EQO results.
Okay. I'm going to turn this over to the trustees for comments or questions.
Through you, Chair.
Go ahead, Trustee Swan.
I'd like to know what we are doing as a board in math for bringing it out of the classroom to cross-curricular, incorporating math in other subjects. If you could please expand on that. Thanks.
Through you, Chair. We do have, that is a particular focus of some of the work that we've been doing this year. On Friday, this coming Friday, we have planned a math training session. It's one of the designated professional development days for math in our board. And all teachers, all staff will be participating in math treks where they go out and around the school building, and they are looking for math in all aspects of and all subject areas. We are also, staff on that day will be looking at where the math is in all curriculum areas, and there is an activity based in that. We know that good strategies in math, those same strategies can be used in every classroom area. You can take the word math out, and they're very applicable in every area. And the other piece of it is highlighting that in subjects like music, art, English, geography, science, math is ever present in every subject area. So really that integrated approach to that.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Oh. Mr. Cartner.
Through you, Chair. On your graphs that you showed from EQAO and the comparison between the two, I noticed that on the graphs, the province is also declining in the results of their score, the scores. Is EQAO giving any reason for those scores going down? I mean, it's not our fault, kind of. Well, it's not what I want to say, but they must have some ideas as to why it's declining.
Through you, Chair, I won't speak on behalf of EQO, but I think one of the targets or the ways to address that is really focusing on our curriculum in our classrooms, and I think that has been one of the messages over the last couple of years, because really EQAO is to measure the Ontario curriculum, and so if we were taking more leeway in our instruction in that, we really have to come back and focus on the overall objectives in the curriculum and to refocus that. And I think, again, that's coming out in our literacy training and our numeracy training now.
Okay. Trustee Armour?
I'd like to know the history behind it. So I'm looking at the numbers through your chair, and we're consistently 10% below just the provincial average. And so are we quick enough to adapt when there are curriculum changes?
Through you, Chair.
It's a loaded question, Superintendent, I know. But we're consistent.
Yes, through you,
said it
Chair.
yourself.
We are consistently below. The curriculum does not change that often. It is revised from time to time, and they've gone through a series of revisions. Math has been revised, language has been revised, most recently health and phys ed has been revised. The revisions haven't been whole scale. So I think the content of the curriculum has changed somewhat. I feel that our learners coming into our classrooms are quite diverse compared to our previous learners, and that is a big focus of our instruction now, is changing that approach. And also our goal in our board is having students being able to access the activities, not separated out, but what we call low floor and high ceilings. So there's tasks in our classrooms where all students can access the task, and it allows the teacher to see where the students are at and what specifically needs to be done for each group of students in the classroom. So it's taking a much different approach in our classroom instruction.
Thank you. Trustee Cram.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Superintendent Allen. Have we investigated our coterminous board and our neighboring boards as to how they rank in relation to the province as well? So are we looking at demographics that's an issue, or any particular observation there?
Through you, Chair. One of the areas that we do look at demographics is through something called the Early Development Instrument for our early years, not as much through EQAO. Really, we try to focus on our own schools and what our data is, and sometimes cohort size can have an impact as well. So, but we really are trying to focus on our own results.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Bill McPherson, and then Trustee McDonald.
Through the chair, I won't phrase this as a question, more as a comment because it would be a loaded question and obviously a loaded answer. I'm questioning whether this testing has lost its significance. As you go through the numbers, we've flatlined everywhere. The province has flatlined. Our graduation rate exceeds the success rate on the grade 10 literacy test. Why? Because if you don't get it the first time, you'll get it the second time. You can even take a remedial course that will teach you to the test. And I feel that maybe, just maybe, our students are looking at this and saying, I really don't need to ace this to graduate. This is just my feeling. It's not like a test that's done in class to gauge your progress through the lessons. It's a snapshot that is done province-wide. And it may have been groundbreaking when it started, but we've been dealing with it now for, I would say, 10 to 12 years. And maybe somebody needs to reinvent the wheel here, because it's kind of like the law of diminishing return. When they first brought it out, it did have a major impact on our schools and their achievement goals. But I see everything flatlining. In other words, this is as good as it's going to get. And I question sometimes the amount of resources that we're putting into trying to fix something that is basically unfixable. And that's just a comment. I do not expect anybody at this table to answer that, because I've been observing this for the last 10 to 12 years, and it bothers me that the success of a school or the success of a board is measured on what I consider arbitrary numbers. I'm sorry. End of comment.
Thank you very much. Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. I certainly don't want to get into the debate of whether it should be or shouldn't be. I think it's there and we have it. So part of our job is to ensure that we follow the act and the regulations and do it. Until that changes, we have to face the reality that it's there. Just coming back to the results that we've had, and we compare ourselves to the province, and the intent of this back in the day was student achievement, right? It was about individual students and making sure that they had some progression along that line. It's turned into an evaluation of school versus school and community versus community and board versus board, and year over year results. And the difficulty with that is that we do have new students rating every year, and yes, we should see some incremental changes over a period of time. But what I look at is how well those students that rate in grade 3, how well do they do in grade 6? And yes, it has been consistent, so the province has made those marks significant, but we have as well. And I think that's an important piece for us to message out to our community and to our families to say, we see progression with our students. We see that these students have written a test in grade 3, and when we write that, not the same test, a similar test based on new outcomes and new learning, we see some opportunities that some realities that those kids have done better. And I think that's an important piece that we lose through this process. The other comment that I have is that, EQAO is only a piece of the puzzle, and you hear it talked about on a regular basis, but it is a piece of the puzzle because there are many other things that we do to evaluate the success of our students. We have formative and summative assessments. This is a summative assessment. There are many things that we do on a regular basis, but yet we don't publish it. We don't talk about the report card data, which is another formative type of assessment. But the teachers do it on a regular basis. It's all encompassing in what we do. It's all part of the achieving excellence. We do it on a regular basis. Our kids are successful. And yes, we equated it down to a specific number once a year, but we get trapped into this and we talk about that. And what we need to do as boards across the province is start to talk about the other successes that our kids are having. And part of it is these school presentations that we see, right? We see the school presentations, we know that what they're doing based on their SIPSs, and we know that they're facing the realities of those students they have in their schools and in their classrooms. And they're making marked improvements year over year with those students by the work that they're doing. And we need to pay more attention to what the schools are telling us they're doing on a regular basis and the SIPSA work that they're doing, and certainly champion that and send that message out to our communities loud and clear. So enough from the pedestal, I won't say the pulpit, but I have a question.
I wouldn't suggest you do.
I do have a question, and it relates to how students write the EQAO. And it comes to the fact that I know there's a practice among a lot of boards in the province to get accommodations for students. And when we look at the students that write for us, what is the ratio of our students with accommodations compared to other boards? And I don't know the number, but I know firsthand that we don't sit here and talk to our students about providing accommodations in order for them to be successful on an EQAO test. I know that doesn't happen. So I don't know what the numbers are that we have accommodations, but I know that it doesn't happen in our schools. I can't say the same thing about some other boards. And so, you know, there is a bit of a manipulation of data sometimes whenever you can start to have that opportunity placed in front of students that will give you an accommodation by the time you hit grade 3. It'll last for you until you have the end of EQAO tests. And I think that's wrong. So the question is, how many of our students actually have accommodations? And I guess that would mean they have IEPs, but of those IEPs, how many of those students are actually identified with IPRCs? I mean, we don't have the exact number, but ballparks.
Through you, Chair. I actually don't even have the ballpark with me tonight, but what I will say, however, is that you're right. We do, if a student is being accommodated in an EQAO, that means on a daily basis in their classroom work, they are receiving those same accommodations, whether it's time, scribing, having questions read to them. That is what we do, and we ensure that those accommodations are in place for the EQAO test. A few years ago, under the leadership of Superintendent Edwards, we did an audit actually of an IEPs to ensure that IEPs were not put in place just for EQAO, that these students, that they carried on and the students were using these on a daily basis. So that is the standard in our board, and that's what we do. And I can get the numbers for you.
Yeah. Thank you. Trustee Armour.
Just to follow up through, Chair.
Sorry.
I know it's just a snapshot of one day, but it seems very consistent. And so my question is around what are we doing for, I listened to your presentation last time around math and the program that we're putting in place, and that's fabulous. What are some other things that we're doing to help our teachers and our principals roll out programs to help them prepare for this test? Maybe you could elaborate on that for me, over and above what you presented before.
Right, through you, Chair. One of the things that schools do with data that they have, which may be previous EQAO data, it may be, because we do look at the cohort, we do look at students who are not achieving 3 or 6 or 9. Students are, especially in the secondary schools, we do have study groups. They often will do OSSLT preparation, but really those preparation courses are based on skills that the students don't have. So they will often do practice tests ahead of time and say, this is a skill that this group of students is lacking. It's not widespread for them. I think the bigger piece of the puzzle for us at this point in time in our board is we really are looking at that grade 7 to 10 cohort, that intermediate literacy and numeracy piece, and making sure that our students who have been successful in grade 6 continue on that continuum, and students who at grade 6 have not been successful, that we're changing our instructional strategies in grade 7 to 10 to prepare them for that test. Because really the test is about, the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test is about a minimum standard. We want the students to be wholesomely prepared for their literacy work as they move forward to the world.
Okay, just a supplementary.
Certainly.
So that's great. Maybe I'll rephrase the question. It was more around the lines of we're below the provincial average. Are we looking at other school boards for help? How about that?
Yes.
I'm just curious.
Absolutely.
We are, okay.
Through you, Chair. A number of strategies that we have in place for that. As a matter of fact, 2 years ago when we embraced the BIPSA and SIPSA process, we reached out through our ministry counterparts and really looked at a number of boards and what they were doing to help develop our SIPSA and BIPSA process. The other thing is we're part of networks in Eastern Ontario in particular, and also we go to ministry training in Toronto as well. But just recently, for example, last Friday, there was a ministry session in Ottawa where teams from every board in the Eastern region went, and the whole purpose was to share what strategies are they using in each board. For them, it was on the math, and our assistant teachers went, and our principal, and they were able to share strategies of what people were doing. We feel we're very confident we have a good plan, but we also picked up some really good tips from other boards that were working well. So we're always reaching out to look.
A quick one. Real quick supplementary. Oh, sure. In your professional opinion, when you implement these things that are changed, and our parents always want data, we're in a society where we want things very quickly.
That's right.
How long does it take, Superintendent, for the results to at least meet the provincial average?
It was a short question, long answer.
Well, let's face it, it's been since, I've got data here from 2000, right? From 2000 and what? 2003, and we're consistent. Bad.
Through you, Chair. I think our focus is on our classrooms, one student at a time, like every student. And I think as you look at the cohort data that comes up through the school presentations, you'll see the up and downs as a group, but we're hoping that the targeted instruction for each student. And yes, we realize some students are not achieving as well as they did 3 years before that, and that's what we have to continually pay attention to.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Trustee Swan.
And this is directed to Superintendent Allen. I mean, the children nowadays, especially the elementary panel, they're into video games, they're into the computers. There are math programs like Khan Academy and Prodigy that the schools have brought in. And I mean, the math is taught differently, and I think, and this is a comment and will be a question, but the parents, and I did very well in math in high school, but I don't understand the new math, and I see that as a very common concern. So using these websites, I mean, the children can learn it and enhance it, but why are we not pushing this out, but sending out the information to the parents, and even for the high school board? I mean, there is math help available now at the high school level for students on a website where they can get a teacher one-on-one without having to pay for a tutor. Why are we not sending this information out? This is where you can get help. That's my question.
Through you, Chair. We actually are focusing on that outreach part. The ministry has provided a number of different resources and pamphlets for parents. They've also provided excerpts that principals can use in their newsletters describing math. There is the homework help program that's available 5:30 to 9:30 every evening for students. It is free of charge, and we are promoting that in our secondary schools so students can reach out and they get a live teacher who can help them through that. There are also some online, there's a new program called M-Power with the letter M and the word power that students can go on and parents can go on to learn more about the math and see the math. Some of the math programs that you referenced, some of them are they're an enhancement to the program. They are not the total math program. So we're also trying to promote that conceptual, not just the procedural understanding, but also the conceptual understanding. So there's lots more to the curriculum than just going on a computer program that helps you with the computation. So that's where our math classrooms really come in and support that.
Thank you, Trustee Kartner.
Thank you.
Chair McMillan?
Yes, Trustee Garrell, can I?
Yeah, just through you, Chair.
Certainly.
Superintendent Allen, I guess at Amby a few years ago, when I was a director, and I had a strong board, and we have somewhat of a non-transient population, of course. And we had problems with a lot of the test scores that came out through EQAO, and in our grade 3 and our grade 6. Of course, it carried on, of course, over at that time at General Vanier through grade 9. And our board stated that, for one, we communicated with our community members, our parents and that. But we also started a program. We wrote a couple proposals, and we were able to get some funding, not just to rely on EQAO, but also to look at other evaluations, but not just for grade 3, 6, and 9. We also had teachers talking to their lower grade and upper grade teachers as teams to really look at who was the high flyers, who were really doing well in math, but also the ones that, of course, at the lower end that needed are at risk, and to work together, but not just at those grades. We tried to, for 4 years, we followed them to the next grade, from grade 3, grade 4, grade 5. We were testing them each year, all the grades, to see how they did it. And, of course, we had resources to be able to do it, and it improved. So I think that if we're looking at we're real community schools, are they doing something like that? Communicating with each other as team teachers, but also with the community, let them know. And Trustee Swan, I really thank you for also looking at the new programs that are out there, because you're the first one that has talked about being within the community, but talking to parents about help that they could have. I just add that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Garrell. Trustee Kartner.
Just, it doesn't look like there's any more hands going up. So I just, the comment I want to make that Trustee McDonald mentioned that this is only one aspect of the evaluation that we do, and he's crack on with that. As teachers, they look at the whole child in every aspect, and not just the EQAO tests. It is one way, it's one that gets sensationalized in my view. That's my view. And I'm glad to hear that there's lots going on in our classrooms that aren't being stressed on EQAO. So, thank you.
The last word, second last word goes to student trustee Laura.
Okay, so I have a comment as well as a question. So first of all, through you, Chair, I'd like to comment on what Trustee Swan was talking about, the math. For personal experience, I do know it is being advertised in the high schools, specifically mine for sure. Like, they're definitely out there, students are aware of them, and we are using them. They're great resources. Just from a student's perspective, I want all the Board of Trustees to know that they are out there and we are using them. For a question, I'm kind of backtracking a bit, but for the preparation for ministry testing, I'm just wondering, like, is the amount of preparation and practice for ministry testing consistent with all the schools? Like, is the same amount given to each school, or is it based personally on each individual school?
Through you, Chair. Every school has a plan of some sort, and so the focus on the how much depends on, most schools do some sort of practice test, so it would depend on how much enhancement that they feel that they need. One of the things that many of our schools, or families of schools, are doing as well is literacy, after school literacy and numeracy courses, and the Reach Ahead courses for grade 8 students. So often those enhancements that are in place will also help the students in their preparation for their high school English or math.
Certainly.
So if the students are feeling, although the practice is given to them and the practice that the schools have set up is not enough, how would they go about talking to the principals or figuring out a plan where they do feel it is satisfactory to their needs?
Through you, Chair, any student who feels that their needs are not being met can always reach out to their teachers, their principals, their resource teachers, where we are here to help with that. So yes, we would encourage students, if they feel that they're ill prepared for anything, whether it's the UKO test or any subject, that they should reach out to their teacher or their principal.
Thank you.
Student voice is very important to us.
Thank you.
Yes.
And thank you for those questions. Director, you've been waiting patiently.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, you know, the Board of Trustees has a very broad view, I believe, about what they desire for students by virtue of the mission statement that the board has about preparing students for a successful life. So I'm not surprised by the comments that people bring forward, and that broad view of student achievement, I've tried to promote that in different places where I am, but if I had to summarize what it sounds like, it's about students being smart, good, and resilient, because those are all elements that leads to that successful life that we desire for all students. And at the same time, I recognize that in the professional setting in which we're being asked to serve students, that all professions and any setting that they happen to be in have an interest in precision. Excuse me. And I think that that the test does serve the profession that way, about becoming a bit more precise about where we can serve students next. And if I think about the presentation that happened this evening from Thousand Island Secondary School, you might have heard that Mr. Gardner was talking about number sense and algebra as a weakness, where they need to focus more clearly on that area of the curriculum so that students would be more successful in their learning. Or in reading, you know, you hear not just about people talking about reading, but they talk about reading for meaning or point of view. And that's a very important set of skills for students to be critical in terms of their readers and to be able to process the content that they have. What I did hear, which bears some acknowledgement and recognition for everybody, I think, this evening, is about the context in which students are engaging the assessment and whether or not the assessment's keeping up with the times. And here's two examples. We heard one trustee mentioning already about the digital world that students are born into and live as part of their daily lives, and do they see a way in which they have become accustomed to sharing their thinking digitally through the test, not through the format of the test, but as a way of helping to share their thinking and the tools that they use that allows them to arrive at what they believe is an important way of sharing their understanding. The second part that's really important, and all of us in the room have probably seen this when we visited a school, is we see students working more and more in pairs and teams, table groupings. And if that is the predominant way in which we have students learning math or learning how to write well or learning as readers, then sometimes a standardized test experience can be really foreign, can't it? And we need to make sure that as we work with our students, that we have balanced assessment, that we have a variety of tasks and experiences that students can show how they can share their learning and share their understanding, demonstrate their skill. And if we do that, I think that we are serving our students well. And I guess that really takes me to the last point, which is, we're really ensuring that if students are going to be successful, we've done two things. We've given students practice around that type of assessment experience, that they've seen that kind of assessment experience before, where they've been asked independently to provide a set of responses to questions that are of importance to their learning. But secondly, it's important that students recognize the questions. And if they're recognizing the questions, it means that teachers are teaching very explicitly the curriculum that's part of grade 3 or grade 5 or grade 10 or grade 9. And that explicitness is an important way of validating that not only are we seeing that day to day, but we saw that well in advance of test day, because in the end, all the provincial assessments are supposed to be replicating key parts of the curriculum and asking students to respond to that. In the end, I think staff have tried to confirm that we are conscious of our obligation to participate in the assessment and to use it in a way that helps us to serve students. And we're at the same time also aware that we have and want to look at the whole student and how we're ensuring that we're investing in, that smart, good, and resilient person, and not just simply in one part of their being.
Thank you, Director. Any other comments or questions? Well, I thank all of you. It was a very robust and a very rich conversation on this. Alan, thank you. Okay, moving on to the next action item is a report from the Special Education Advisory Committee, SEAC, and I'll turn this over to the Chair of SEAC, Trustee Bill McPherson.
Right, thank you. Okay, we met on the 4th of October. Okay, I'm going to use hers because I'm... And first thing we did was recognize some retiring members. And I'm going to ask Val to speak to this after my report. Linda Long and Kathy Blair were both long-serving members of SEAC. Melinda was in attendance, and the committee thanked her for years of service. Then we had a report, which was actually quite interesting, on supports for students with hearing and vision disabilities. And what was particularly interesting about this is normally this is something that we only see on a line on the Section J, or what we call the October report. Believe it or not, we have 254 students within our board that are either vision impaired or hearing impaired. And essentially we have 4 people covering that off. And it's split essentially along the 416 into 2 regions. So we're serving an awful lot of people, an awful lot of locations with what I consider minimal staff. They did bring a lovely presentation of their teaching aids. It was very informative, simply because it put a face on what is normally a line in a report. And Val was playing hooky that night. So we had Superintendent Coombs, who, I can give him credit, he was probably quite pleasant that night. And he gave us a quick rundown on the upcoming facilities review process. And believe it or not, we actually got out of there on time. So anyways, I'm going to turn it over to Val with the chair's permission to talk about the vacancies on SEAC.
Really?
Through you, Chair. Both organizations that had their members have retired have both indicated that they will be bringing forth nominations for new members, which has not yet happened. We do have a SEAC meeting next week, and so at that time we will be making requests to SEAC and through the board to go to the next step, which would be advertising for in media and to fill some of the chairs, the vacant chairs on the SEAC committee.
Thank you. Any comments or questions you'd like to direct to Trustee McPherson? No, seeing there are none, thank you very much for that report.
You're very welcome.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to OSPA Director, Trustee David McDonald, to give us a report from OSPA.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I did want to bring the board up to date on a couple of things as it relates to OSPA. First and foremost, we have a regional meeting that's coming up on the 5th of, I'm just trying to get the agenda here for you, 5th of November. All trustees are welcome to attend. It is in Ottawa at Earl of March Secondary School. Meeting will get underway at 10 o'clock with a tour of the school. We will also look at a number of other particular items. So they are going to review in an orientation of regional meetings, the role of the regional vice president. We'll discuss current OPSPA issues around labor relations, a finance update, and the well-being strategy consultation. We'll have regional input, and I'll speak to this item a little bit later, but regional input around the 2017-2018 education funding consultation guide that just came out. Input around trustee honoraria. We will also look at sharing effective practice as school board's internal election process of how we elect our chair and vice chair. Each board is asked to identify what process works well for electing chairs and vice chairs, committee chairs, and other committee representations. We'll look at individual board updates and a number of items that we'll hope to answer from the regional meeting perspective and bring back to board directors is what PD are we interested in receiving at regional meetings? What would we like included in future agendas? And what is the best method to gather regional input on issues in a timely manner on regular basis? So those items will be discussed on the 5th. And also just reviewing future dates, Public Education Symposium in January, the 19th to 21st in Toronto. Labor Relations and HR Symposium, April 6th and 7th in Toronto. The OPSPA AGM, June 8th and 11th in Collingwood. And the next regional meeting will be in April for a yet to be determined host board. The one thing that I did really want to talk about was the education consultation guide that came out. And, you know, funding is always a huge issue for boards and any time of the year, but certainly within our communities as we have discussions about certain things and when we look at budget. And so I want to bring all trustees received the email from OPSPA about the consultation guide. OPSPA's process will be that they will prepare a response to the consultation guide and present it to the ministry. And just so we are aware, the consultation guide is looking for specific information. Obviously, we can have an opportunity to provide general information, but the specific information that they're looking for this year is around achieving excellence, broadening equity in education, broadening the equity in education conversation, and enhancing public confidence. And those three particular areas break down a little further, and they review in achieving excellence, the renewed mathematics strategy, the high skilled workforce, a report that was published a couple years ago, enabling digital education. Under equity in education, they'll be talking about special education grant, the Indigenous education, and children and youth in care. Enhancing public confidence, they'll talk about they're looking for information back on next steps in community hubs, school board administration and governance compliance, and further transformation of other transfer payments. So let's break it down a little bit further on a couple of these things. Most importantly, last meeting I talked about children and youth in care. The CAS group met with the OPSPA. Essentially what they're looking for is to have some sort of a memorandum of understanding, a disclosure of information, confidentiality, those types of things put in place so that at least there is a better mechanism in place for the sharing of education, sharing of information for the success of those students that happen to be in care, in custody and care. Further transformation of other transfer payments. We've seen over the years that there have been EPO grants, other educational program other grants, and they used to be considered bombs. They would come out different parts of the year and they would be provided to the boards with a lot of strings attached. You had to do A, B, and C and report back to the ministry. A lot of those EPO grants have now come out at the budget time and are known to the boards when they're presented, but there is still some requirements associated for reporting purposes. So looking to have some of that cleaned up a little bit. Obviously, next steps in community hubs, the ministry is very keen and wants to pursue that community hub piece as quickly as possible so that they have a clean understanding of some of the excess space that we have in our schools. So how can they be used in communities? Just to go back, what OPSPA's role is in this whole process. OPSPA, as we talk in the past, OPSPA's work around the key works of OPSPA, one of the main focuses is education funding. And the advocacy work that they do on a regular basis on behalf of all English public boards is to make sure that there is an opportunity to have a right sizing of the education. Although we do talk about having a complete review of the funding formula, we have specific sections that we've talked about. So one of the key points, the first points, is advocacy for a full and complete review of funding model to ensure it supports current needs of school boards. But we also look at specifics. We look at continued advocacy for full funding of the ministry and any new initiatives. So if they come up with a new initiative, are we funded for it completely? Advocacy for infrastructure funding, including flexibility in funding approaches, transparency, and approval process for capital projects. Advocacy for the ministry to review the current education development charges. Ensuring strong school board participation in contribution of next steps in implementing community values. Advocate for the importance of community schools to community sustainability. That's all part of what OPSPA does as part of their advocacy piece. We're all aware of it, it comes forward. So last year, the key areas that the ministry looked for and OPSPA responded to, they were around, again, 3 different areas. There's a continuation of the school board efficiency and modernization, equity in education, and expanded accountability measures. So OPSPA provided that feedback on the specific areas they were looking for, and certainly there were some changes made as a result of some of the work that OPSPA has done. So, you know, we've seen an opportunity to make sure that we have the ability to make change in the province with the voice of OPSPA, and I know that the staff that are involved in OPSPA are very aware of the intricacies and how it affects boards across the province, and ensure that whenever they meet with the ministry and ministry staff, that they're always bringing up the pain points, I guess, of boards across the province and how they're being affected. And one of those key areas in the past has been special education funding. I mean, some of the things that we're going to continue to talk about, how the changes that they've made have impacted boards in delivering special education because of the reduction in funding. So there's an opportunity for us to review and provide some feedback formally, but we can also ensure that we provide feedback to OPSPA as part of their submission as well. So OPSPA has a board of directors meeting the 1st and 2nd of December, and if we have an opportunity to review that on your own, the funding guideline that their ministry has put out, or if we have any other information that we want to bring forward, then we will do that. OPSPA also engages the SBOs across the province and look for specific feedback from them, and then we also look at some of the work teams. So for specific areas, as it relates to funding, we would go back and I want to say task, but have the work of the work teams respond and provide some insight back to staff and board of directors at OPSPA. So, Mr. Chair, I don't really have any other information as far as updates from the ministry. I will add, though, that the ministry made an announcement this week, and I haven't seen it, but I think it was 26 new schools that they're going to be building within the province. So funding provided to those schools and those communities. It's been, I guess, a quiet week on the Ontario front.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions? Trustee Cartner?
Through you, Chair, to our Director of OPSPA, has the Board of Directors discussed any way in which we can get this information out to the public that they have been working on and the recommendations that the different boards have given to them to bring out as a public document towards the government? Can we address this and share it with our public? Well, this information that's on the OPSPA website is for them to look at as well.
Yep. May I Mr. Chair? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. It's public information. OPSPA is an advocacy group for boards of education, promoting public education in Ontario, and their information is on the website. There is a members area for some documentation, but all of this stuff is public. It's a public domain, so the reports that they submit to the ministry are published. In fact, they've upgraded their website in the last 6 months or so, and it's very clean, it's very nice, and lots of access to it. So part of the work of OPSPA is to make sure that we come back to our boards and talk about it as well, but OPSPA does make the information public. We still have a magazine, but some things are going to change there, but you know, we've got the website in place. We've got I can't think of website that they used whenever election time comes around to help inform the public and inform people who are considering running for trustee. They've done a lot more work over the last 4 years or so to try and make themselves more known publicly. I would say we're sometimes facing a battle because the media tends to go to another group over OPSPA, but it's something that we can share within our communities by giving them a link.
Trustee Wendy Pearson?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, but my question's for you, Dave, with regards to OSPA's work. I had a question sent to me, and it says, did OSPA make any attempt to oppose the education minister's move to strip away community impact criteria involving school closures? Were you guys consulted before? Because I don't think the individual boards were, but I wanted to know if you guys had some input on there. Do you remember?
Yeah. So the ministry has put out information to look at how ARC processes have worked in the past. And obviously they've collected feedback and used that feedback to make the changes. I will point back to the main key point that we raise within funding is that we advocate for the importance of community schools, community sustainability. So, despite the fact that it's there, and despite the fact that the ministry has made those changes, I think it was also imperative that when we went through our processes in the past, there was that opportunity for boards to understand that we have a job to do as boards of education, and we need to make sure that we are owners of our process, and we're responsible for the education component, and so we needed to make sure that we commented on the process, but we still keep sight of an important community aspect. I think at the end of the day, the ministry made the adjustments that were required in their mind to ensure that there was an efficient process. But we always provide feedback to the ministry if we're asked and given the opportunity. And if we know that something's coming, we do work on that. Even though something has not been consulted with us, I will speak to the fact that we will provide feedback on the impact to boards as well.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much for that report.
Through you, Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Trustee Swan.
This is directed to Trustee McDonald. Just wondering if OPSA's, I haven't seen anything in the literature, made any comments on sustainable rural schools?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, again, thank you. Okay, moving on, there are a couple of items that we're not going to discuss, but they're for your information. One being a notice of motion to amend the board bylaw, which I ask the trustees to take a look at. We'll be working with that in the very near future. Director, do you have any comments?
I do, Mr. Chair. I'd like to remind members of the Board of Trustees that our schools are still actively involved in the Canada 150 celebrations that we're holding throughout the year. We had a wonderful ceremony last week at Vanier Public School around their garden where they were the recipient of red and white bulbs so that they are planting them and looking forward to them coming up in the spring. And it was just another example of a lot of the different approaches that our schools are finding as a way of celebrating Canada's 150th birthday. On our board's website, we do have a calendar of events, and if you take a look at that and click on schools, you'll see a particular day and sometimes the description of the activity that's happening at the schools. And I know that they would welcome and enjoy your support if you're available, and certainly to whatever extent we can, the senior team is trying to have a presence at those events as well, because they're great moments and they're very community oriented, and it's makes you feel really good to be a Canadian.
Thank you. Okay, my comments. Was it last Friday that we were at with our student trustee? And was it Friday? 2 Fridays before? That shows where I've been. That's right. And I want to thank you for the leadership you showed in that meeting. There was something that came out of that was, I think, very valuable, and I remember commenting on it at the time. It was the open discussion that you had at the end of the meeting. And the way you managed to garnish input from everyone in the room. And you did that through collaboration, and you did that by being open to the input. And it was very successful. And I think everyone in that room felt valued and listened to, and you managed to come up with a decision very, very easily because of the input. And any of us that were there, I think, kind of watched that and went, that's pretty cool. I say that because I think, as in my position as the chair of the board right now, I cannot miss any opportunities where people may be watching or listening to reinforce the process that we are in right now and the value of constructive input. It's so important that the input comes to us. There are numerous ways that input can be given to us through our website link. The survey is completed? Are we still have that's still on the go? That's right.
February 1st.
That's right. So the survey is still going, and we're getting a lot of action on that. So a lot of input there. A lot of input is coming to us through the link. And when I say us, I don't mean us as the Board of Trustees. It's coming to our staff because that's where it has to come through. We had finished our meetings with our municipalities and their staff and their elected officials, some of them that attended. From there, we're looking forward. Our staff is looking forward to them going back and giving us a very detailed response in terms to our thinking and the impact it'll have in their areas and suggestions. So I think that's going to be very positive input. And our municipalities do play a very important role in this process, especially in that connection to their areas, their municipalities, their region, and the input that they know that they work with constantly. So that's a very valuable source. I also know that when we move into the final report that we're going to be having delegations and be gathering the input from there. So I keep going back to the word input. I've said it so many times, but I'll never stop saying it. We have not closed any schools. We will not close any schools until all of the input has been in and the final report comes to us. And I want to make sure that it's very clear, nothing is already a done deal. Nothing. So I think that's really important. The last comment I want to make has to do with us as the Board of Trustees. We have a lot of work to do over and above what's happening right now. And so one of the things that we need to get back to work on is working with our strategic planning and developing a board work plan. And so I've asked you tentatively to schedule time following the organizational meeting, because usually the organizational meeting in December is not a very long meeting. It's just there were an election of chairs and vice chairs and so on. And so after that meeting, I'm asking us to meet, to sit down with the director and to take a look at developing a board work plan that can take us over the next few years. So it's a matter of between now and then thinking about where we want to go with that. But I don't want us to get lost and forget that we have lots of work to do, because it's sometimes very easy to get distracted by some things, and these things are very important, obviously, that are happening, but we also have work to do. So I'm asking you to keep some time after that relatively short December the 7th meeting, and we will start to work on our strategic planning and continue where we'd left off. And that's all I have to say. So I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board move into Committee of the Whole, October 22nd, moved by Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee Armour. And I should have cast your, just show of hands actually will work. Thank you. That carries. And the second motion is that we move into the private session, October 22nd, moved by Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee Bill McPherson. Again, show of hands. Thank you very much, and I'll turn this over to